The Cartesian plane. We use the Cartesian plane a lot for different questions, for creating graphs, all sorts of those things, and we will use them this term. But I just want to give you an overview of what is the Cartesian plane and how is it used, or the different names of the different parts. Now, the Cartesian plane was first invented/created in 1637. And it was developed so that it could be used as a reference system for accurately locating any point on a flat surface. It can sometimes be called the number plane, but we kind of prefer Cartesian plane because it is named after the inventor. Now, the Cartesian plane is constructed by drawing two straight lines at right angles. So these are right angles to each other, or perpendicular. And one is horizontal out here, meaning it goes from left to right, and then one is vertical, which means it goes up and down. The X is obviously horizontal and Y is vertical. Now these lines are also called axis. So this is the X axis and the Y axis. And the plural is axes. So these are the two axes of our Cartesian plane. X goes across, Y goes high, or Y goes to the sky. That's a nice way to remember which direction it goes. The point where they cross, right here in the middle, this is called the origin. It's right there in the middle. Now, the thing that you need to remember is that the Cartesian plane is infinity length long. So it goes on forever. We could keep drawing it forever towards the left for the X, or forever into negatives, or forever up to the top for Y, or forever down. We usually look at the part of the Cartesian plane that we're working with, which will often be the center where the origin sits. We'll often have that. But you could be way up into the right or way down into the left. In fact, when you're in primary school, you probably use this part right here to create graphs or build bar graphs or any of those sorts of things. You probably use this part. We use that in primary school because it's all positive, positive X and positive Y. When you get further into the negatives, and you learn about negative numbers, then you start to learn that the graph also goes in the other direction. Now, this part that you would have used in primary school, we call that the first quadrant. Now, it's called quadrants because it's split into four, and quad means four, so it's split into four. Now, a really great way to remember is that the Cartesian plane is not a clock, so the second quadrant goes anti-clockwise to be up here at the top as well. Then we have the third quadrant, you guessed it, down here in the bottom. And lastly, we have the fourth quadrant sitting underneath the first. So those are our four quadrants. Now, let's just take a look at each quadrant separately. So here, the first quadrant, we can see that X is a positive number and Y is also a positive number up here. So in the first quadrant, both X and Y are positive. In the second quadrant, however, X is now a negative number, but Y remains positive. In the third quadrant, X is negative and Y is negative. So this is our double negative quadrant. And lastly, down here, our X is positive, but our Y is negative. So that will be the case for all numbers. I have had some people ask me, what about if a point is right here? What quadrant is it in? It is in fact not in a quadrant at all. We say that it's on the x-axis. So a point can lie in three different places. It could lie inside a quadrant like this. It could lie on an axis like this one. Or it could lie on the origin, which we call the origin. The other thing that I thought I would mention is that any point on the quadrant, on the Cartesian plane, can be given a name and it can be described by coordinates. Now you would have heard of the word coordinates before, but more accurately in maths, we call them ordered pairs. Now, the reason we do that is because, first of all, it's a pair of number, but we call them ordered because they always sit in the same order. So this is one of those mathematical conventions that are all around the world and everyone understands. That X always comes first and Y always comes second. So X is talking about its position from left to right, and Y is talking about its position up and down. If you want to look more at how to plot points or how to read points on the Cartesian plane, you can check out the other videos. But just as a bit of a summary, some things that I want you to remember. We always move left to right first and then up and down. That's another mathematical convention. The name ordered pairs is important, and you always write the X first and the Y second, and it's always in these brackets. These round brackets, that's also important. The round brackets signify a point. If you do different types of bracket, it signifies different things. So coordinates or points are always in round brackets. And then you can remember that the origin right in the middle is 0, 0. Things like axis and first quadrant and stuff, that's useful just to know in case that it comes up in a question. I hope this has given you a good overview of the Cartesian plane. If you need to know how to work with the Cartesian plane or anything like that, check out some of the other videos. In the meantime, here's a cute pictures of my dogs on their favorite thing in the world, going for a walk.